I'm diving deep into the chilling truth behind Lori Vallow's actions and challenging myself to uncover every detail of this twisted story. Lori Vallow, a seemingly ordinary mother of three from suburban Idaho, led a life that, at first glance, appeared no different from that of any other parent. She was known as a doting mother, involved in her children's lives and active in her social circles. But beneath this facade of normalcy, Lori's life was slowly taking a sinister turn. Her transformation began when she became deeply involved in a fringe religious group that espoused radical doomsday beliefs. Drawn in by the group's charismatic leaders and their apocalyptic prophecies, Lori's once conventional life started unraveling in ways that few could have predicted. As Lori delved deeper into the cult's teachings, she became convinced that she had a divine mission to prepare for the end of the world, a mission that would ultimately lead her down a path of destruction. Her obsession with these beliefs grew so intense that it overshadowed her responsibilities as a mother and her connection to reality. The story of Lori Vallow is not just one of a woman lost to delusion. It is a chilling narrative of how belief can warp perception and drive a person to commit unspeakable acts. As we delve into the disturbing events that unfolded, you'll uncover the shocking lengths Lori went to in the name of her twisted faith, acts that would leave a trail of devastation in their wake. The tale of Lori Vallow is a harrowing reminder of how easily a seemingly normal life can spiral into chaos when dark ideologies take hold. In 2019, Lori's children, Joshua J.J. Vallow, Tylee Ryan, and J.J. Vallow, seemingly vanished into thin air, sparking a nationwide search and a growing sense of dread among those who knew the family. The sudden disappearance of these two innocent children was baffling, and as the days turned into weeks, their absence became more ominous. What began as a missing persons investigation quickly spiraled into something far more sinister, as authorities began to unravel a complex web of deceit, manipulation, and darkness, with Lori Vallow Daybell at its center. As investigators delved deeper, they encountered a tangled tale that defied belief. What they uncovered was a narrative filled with bizarre doomsday prophecies, claims of divine missions, and a belief system so warped that it led to the destruction of innocent lives. The investigation revealed that Lori had become deeply enmeshed in a radical religious group led by Chad Daybell, a man who proclaimed to have visions of an impending apocalypse. Under his influence, Lori adopted a cult-like mentality that seemed to justify any means to achieve what she believed was her divine purpose. The further authorities probed, the more they discovered how deeply Lori's actions were orchestrated by this twisted belief system. The case exposed a shocking pattern of manipulation, where Lori and Chad convinced themselves and others that certain individuals, including her children, were dark spirits or zombies who needed to be purged to prepare for the end times. This delusion became the driving force behind a series of events that culminated in the deaths of JJ and Tylee, as well as the attempted murder of others who stood in the way of their apocalyptic vision. The investigation peeled back layers of Lori's seemingly normal life to reveal a woman who had descended into a world where her twisted beliefs took precedence over the lives of those around her, including her flesh and blood. The case serves as a chilling reminder of how powerful and dangerous radical ideologies can become when they are left unchecked, leading to unspeakable acts in the name of a distorted faith. As the search for the missing children intensified, investigators began to piece together the disturbing puzzle of Lori's connection to her fifth husband, Chad Daybell. What initially appeared to be a typical missing persons case soon revealed something far more sinister. An intricate bond between Lori and Chad, rooted in a shared and extreme apocalyptic belief system. This belief system, which centered around an imminent doomsday event, would eventually drive them to commit unthinkable acts. Chad Daybell, an author of several self-published books on end-times prophecy and spiritual warfare, had developed a following with his charismatic and persuasive teachings. He claimed to have visions of the future, predicting that a catastrophic event would soon decimate most of humanity, leaving only a select group of righteous survivors. Lori, captivated by Chad's prophecies and charismatic influence, became convinced that she was one of these chosen survivors. This belief not only deepened her bond with Chad, but also solidified her willingness to do whatever was necessary to fulfill what she saw as her divine mission. The pair's ideology went beyond mere survivalism. It became an all-consuming obsession that dictated their actions and decisions. They believed they were not only destined to survive the apocalypse, but also to lead the new world that would emerge from the ashes. To prepare for this, they took steps they believed would secure their place in this new world, including marrying quickly after the sudden death of Chad's previous wife, Tammy Daybell, in October 2019, a death that would later be re-examined as suspicious. In their twisted view of the world, anyone who opposed them or who was deemed a threat to their divine mission had to be eliminated. This included Lori's 2 children, JJ and Tylee, whom they believed had become dark spirits that needed to be purged. The chilling reality of their beliefs came to light as investigators uncovered evidence suggesting that Lori and Chad were involved in the murders of her children, as well as the attempted murder of others who stood in their way, including Lori's ex-husband, Charles Vallow, and Chad's former wife, Tammy. The deeper authorities dug, the more they uncovered a trail of death and destruction that followed Lori and Chad wherever they went. Their actions were not just the result of a shared delusion, but were part of a deliberate and calculated plan to create the future they envisioned, one in which they held power and control over a new world order. The lengths they went to in pursuit of this vision were shocking, leaving a trail of devastation in their wake and forever changing the lives of everyone who crossed their path. As investigators continued to unravel the threads of Lori and Chad's twisted ideology, it became clear that their belief in an imminent doomsday event had not only driven them to commit heinous crimes, but had also blinded them to the humanity of those they harmed. Their actions serve as a stark reminder of the dangers of radical beliefs and the devastating impact they can have when taken to the extreme. The more investigators learned about Lori Vallow Daybell, the more they realized that her transformation from a seemingly ordinary suburban mom to a fervent doomsday cultist was not a sudden shift, but rather a gradual descent into darkness. This transformation was fueled by her growing obsession with Chad Daybell and his apocalyptic prophecies, which consumed her life and altered her perception of reality. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Lori's journey into this dangerous belief system was marked by a series of increasingly alarming behaviors, each one bringing her further away from the person she once was. Lori's initial introduction to Chad's teachings began as a fascination with his writings on spiritual warfare and the end times. However, what started as a casual interest quickly morphed into an all-consuming obsession. Lori became deeply engrossed in Chad's prophecies, which foretold a looming apocalypse and the rise of a select few who would lead the world through the devastation. Chad, who claimed to have the ability to communicate with the spiritual realm, convinced Lori that she was one of these chosen leaders, destined to play a pivotal role in the events to come. As her devotion to Chad and his beliefs intensified, Lori's behavior began to change in unsettling ways. She grew increasingly paranoid, convinced that those around her were either obstacles to her divine mission or threats to her survival. Friends and family members noticed that Lori had become withdrawn and secretive, isolating herself from those who did not share her newfound beliefs. She began to speak in terms of light and dark spirits, labeling people as either allies or enemies in her spiritual war. This black and white worldview left little room for dissent, and those who questioned her were quickly pushed out of her life. Lori's obsession with Chad and his prophecies also led to a disturbing pattern of behavior that alarmed those close to her. She became fixated on the idea of purging dark spirits from her life, a concept that Chad had introduced to her as part of his teachings. This fixation escalated to the point where Lori believed it was her divine duty to rid the world of these dark influences, even if it meant taking drastic and irreversible actions. Her increasing willingness to do whatever it took to protect her beliefs and fulfill her perceived destiny became evident as she made decisions that put her loved ones at risk. The investigation revealed that Lori's transformation was marked by a series of escalating actions, each more disturbing than the last. She became involved in the mysterious deaths of those who stood in her way, including her fourth husband, Charles Vallow, and Chad's wife, Tammy Daybell. Lori's growing paranoia and devotion to Chad's prophecies led her to justify these deaths as necessary steps in her spiritual journey, further blurring the line between reality and delusion. As investigators delved deeper into Lori's past, they uncovered a trail of deceit and manipulation, revealing how she had used her charm and persuasive abilities to draw others into her dangerous beliefs. She had convinced those around her that she was on a divine mission, and in doing so, she orchestrated a series of events that would ultimately lead to tragedy. The more authorities uncovered, the clearer it became that Lori's transformation was not just the result of her own delusions, but was also heavily influenced by her relationship with Chad, whose apocalyptic vision provided the framework for her descent into madness. Lori's story is a harrowing example of how a person can be slowly and methodically drawn into a dangerous ideology, especially when fueled by intense personal devotion and a willingness to forsake everything, including family, morality, and reality, in pursuit of a twisted belief system. The investigation into her actions exposed the profound impact that such beliefs can have on an individual's psyche, leading to a complete break from reality and a willingness to commit unspeakable acts in the name of a false cause. Lori Vallow Daybell's background, which once appeared to be that of an ordinary woman, actually concealed a complex and troubling tale of manipulation, control, and vulnerability. While she outwardly presented the image of a devoted mother and wife, Lori's past was marked by experiences that left her susceptible to exploitation by a charismatic figure like Chad Daybell. To understand how Lori became enmeshed in such a dark and destructive belief system, one must look back at the underlying factors in her life that set the stage for her eventual transformation. Lori grew up in a home that, by all accounts, was fraught with difficulties. Her early years were marked by a series of personal and familial challenges, including instability, strained relationships, and a pervasive sense of insecurity. These formative experiences shaped Lori's worldview, leaving her with deep-seated emotional wounds and a longing for purpose and validation. Throughout her life, Lori sought out ways to fill this void, often turning to religion and spirituality as a means of finding meaning and stability in a world that had frequently seemed chaotic and unkind. This search for meaning made Lori particularly vulnerable to the influence of powerful and charismatic figures. When she encountered Chad Daybell, a man who exuded confidence and claimed to have special knowledge of the divine, Lori found herself irresistibly drawn to him. Chad, with his authoritative demeanor and apocalyptic teachings, provided Lori with the sense of purpose and belonging she had been seeking for so long. His prophecies offered her not only an explanation for the world's suffering, but also a role in what he portrayed as a grand cosmic plan. Lori's relationship with Chad quickly became intense and all-consuming. What began as a spiritual connection soon developed into a romantic and ideological bond that would dominate her life. Chad's influence over Lori was profound. He not only validated her beliefs, but also encouraged her to adopt increasingly extreme views. Together, they became inseparable, feeding off each other's convictions and growing more radical in their thinking. Lori's devotion to Chad was so complete that she began to distance herself from anyone who did not share their beliefs, including her own family. As Lori and Chad delved deeper into their doomsday prophecies, their bond grew even stronger. They believed that they were special, chosen by divine forces to lead the world through the impending apocalypse. This belief gave them a sense of superiority and righteousness that justified their increasingly erratic and dangerous actions. Lori, who had once been seen as a loving mother and friend, now appeared to be under the spell of Chad's teachings, willing to do whatever it took to fulfill what she saw as her divine mission. The pair's actions became more alarming as they began to act on their apocalyptic visions. Their behavior, once merely unusual, turned deadly as they justified extreme measures to eliminate those they deemed obstacles to their plans. Friends and family who had known Lori for years were shocked by the changes in her personality, as she seemed to transform from a caring, rational individual into someone willing to commit unthinkable acts in the name of a distorted faith. Chad's control over Lori was evident in the way their relationship unfolded. He manipulated her vulnerabilities, using her troubled past and her deep-seated need for approval to draw her further into his web of influence. Under his guidance, Lori became increasingly isolated from reality, her actions reflecting a complete break from the person she once was. The more entwined she became with Chad, the more she lost herself to the dangerous ideology they shared. In the end, Lori's background, marked by early experiences of instability and a longing for purpose, played a significant role in her susceptibility to Chad's manipulation. Her relationship with him, while giving her the sense of direction she craved, ultimately led her down a path of destruction. The tale of Lori Vallow Daybell is a tragic reminder of how easily a person's vulnerabilities can be exploited by those with dangerous intentions, leading to a catastrophic unraveling of their life and the lives of those around them. Chad Daybell's influence over Lori Vallow Daybell cannot be overstated. As the charismatic leader of a doomsday cult, Chad wielded immense power, not just through his apocalyptic teachings, but through his ability to captivate and control those around him. Lori was his most devoted follower, drawn to him by a combination of personal vulnerability, spiritual yearning, and the allure of a higher purpose. Together, Chad and Lori created a toxic environment that thrived on fear, manipulation, and control, ultimately leading to a series of tragic and horrifying events. Chad's charisma was a key factor in his ability to gather followers who believed in his dark and twisted version of spirituality. He presented himself as a visionary, someone who had been chosen by divine forces to reveal hidden truths about the end times. His teachings were laced with fear of the coming apocalypse, fear of demonic possession, and fear of the dark forces that he claimed were constantly at work in the world. Chad positioned himself as the only one who could guide his followers through these terrifying prophecies, making them increasingly dependent on him for both spiritual guidance and protection. Lori, who had been searching for meaning and validation throughout her life, found in Chad someone who not only offered her a sense of purpose, but also reinforced her feelings of specialness and importance. Under Chad's influence, Lori began to see herself as a key player in the apocalyptic scenario he described, a chosen one who would help lead the righteous through the coming devastation. This belief gave Lori a sense of power and control that she had long been seeking, but it also made her increasingly susceptible to Chad's manipulations. As Lori's devotion to Chad deepened, so did her willingness to accept and act on his increasingly extreme ideas. Chad's prophecies became the lens through which Lori viewed the world, and his approval became her primary motivation. She abandoned her previous life, her children, her friends, and even her sanity in pursuit of the future Chad promised her. The bond between them became a dangerous feedback loop, with Lori's obsession fueling Chad's influence and Chad's teachings reinforcing Lori's distorted sense of reality. The environment that Chad and Lori created together was one of absolute control. They fostered a sense of us versus them mentality among their followers, dividing the world into those who were light and those who were dark, those who would survive the apocalypse and those who would not. This black and white thinking allowed them to justify increasingly cruel actions against anyone they deemed to be a threat to their divine mission. Lori, in particular, became so entrenched in this toxic worldview that she began to see her children as obstacles to be removed rather than loved ones to be protected. Lori's obsession with Chad and his prophecies grew to the point where she was willing to sacrifice everything and everyone she once held dear. She distanced herself from her family and friends, cutting ties with those who questioned her or tried to intervene. She became increasingly paranoid, convinced that the world was full of dark spirits and evil forces that were conspiring against her and Chad. In this state of mind, Lori was no longer the person her loved ones had known. She had become a vessel for Chad's apocalyptic vision, willing to go to any lengths to see it fulfilled. Chad, for his part, used Lori's devotion to further his agenda. He reinforced her beliefs, encouraged her paranoia, and pushed her to take actions that aligned with his vision, all while maintaining his position of power and control. Their relationship was a toxic symbiosis, with Chad feeding Lori's delusions and Lori, in turn, feeding Chad's ego and sense of authority. Together, they created a destructive force that led to the tragic deaths of Lori's children, the unraveling of their lives, and the devastation of everyone around them. In the end, Chad's influence over Lori was not just a catalyst for her descent into madness. It was the engine that drove the entire tragic saga. Lori's obsession with Chad and his prophecies led her down a path from which there was no return, ultimately leading to the destruction of her life and the lives of those she was supposed to protect. The toxic environment they created together serves as a chilling reminder of the dangers of unchecked charisma, manipulation, and the all-consuming power of a shared delusion. When authorities finally discovered the remains of Lori Vallow Daybell's children, Joshua J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, the true extent of her depravity was laid bare for the world to see. The grisly discovery, made in June 2020 on Chad Daybell's property in Rexburg, Idaho, shattered any remaining illusions about Lori's role as a mother. The once devoted parent, who had once been seen as loving and protective, had not only abandoned her children, but had done so most callously and horrifyingly manner imaginable. She had discarded them, leaving their bodies to be hidden away, all in the name of her twisted beliefs and the apocalyptic vision she shared with Chad. The remains were found buried in shallow graves, with JJ's small body wrapped in plastic and Tylee's dismembered and burned. These shocking details revealed the brutal reality of what had happened to the children, and they underscored the depth of Lori's descent into darkness. The discovery was not just a turning point in the investigation. It was a moment of profound horror that left even seasoned investigators and the public reeling. The reality of what Lori had done, what she had become, was almost too terrible to comprehend. For months, authorities and the public had held out hope that JJ and Tylee might be found alive, that perhaps they were hidden away somewhere, kept safe from harm. But the discovery of their remains destroyed that hope and replaced it with a grim understanding of the unfathomable depths to which Lori had sunk. This was no longer just a case of a missing person. It was now a tale of murder, betrayal, and the ultimate violation of a mother's duty to protect her children. The revelation of the children's fate marked the point at which any lingering doubts about Lori's culpability were erased. The discovery also brought into sharp focus the destructive power of the cult's hold on Lori's mind. How could a mother who had once cradled her children in her arms and cared for their every need become so consumed by a belief system that she was willing to sacrifice them in its name? This question haunted everyone who followed the case, as the depths of Lori's actions became more apparent with each new piece of evidence. The twisted beliefs she had adopted, fed by Chad Daybell's apocalyptic teachings, had utterly warped her sense of morality and reality. In the end, Lori's abandonment of her children was not just an act of physical abandonment. It was a complete and utter betrayal of the bond between mother and child. She had forsaken them in every possible way, emotionally, spiritually, and finally physically, casting them aside as obstacles in her pursuit of a distorted and dangerous vision of the future. The discovery of their remains was a stark and heartbreaking testament to the power of radical ideology to destroy not only lives, but also the very essence of what it means to be human. For the investigators who had worked tirelessly to find the truth, the discovery of J.J. and Tylee's remains was a bittersweet moment. It brought closure to a grueling search, but also confirmed the worst fears about what had happened to the children. It was a turning point in the investigation, providing the evidence needed to bring charges against Lori and Chad, but it also marked the end of any hope that there might have been some other, less horrific explanation for the children's disappearance. As the investigation progressed, the focus shifted to understanding how Lori could have committed such heinous acts and what role the cult's influence played in her decision-making. The discovery of the children's remains became a symbol of the tragic consequences of her descent into madness and the devastating impact of her belief in Chad's apocalyptic prophecies. It highlighted the dangerous power of manipulation and control in the hands of a charismatic leader and served as a sobering reminder of the lengths to which people can go when they are consumed by a delusional ideology. The remains of J.J. and Tylee, once vibrant and full of life, now served as the most damning evidence of Lori's fall from grace. They were a silent witness to the horror that had unfolded, a reminder of the innocent lives lost to a mother's twisted beliefs and a cult's poisonous influence. In their deaths, J.J. and Tylee became symbols of the ultimate betrayal, a mother's sacrifice of her children on the altar of a false and deadly faith. But how did Lori become so enthralled by Chad's sinister ideology? What drove her to abandon her children and prioritize her beliefs above all else? These are just a few of the questions that still linger, haunting the families affected by this tragedy. As we explore the twisted tale of Lori Vallow Daybell, we're forced to confront the darker aspects of human nature and the devastating consequences of blind devotion. That's all we have for today, fellow Midnight Society members. Did this discussion spark some chills down your spine? Who should we investigate next? We thrive on your insights, so don't be a stranger. Let us know your thoughts below. And hey, if you enjoyed this chronicle, smash that like button and subscribe for more spooky explorations. Sharing the darkness is always encouraged, so spread the word by sharing this video. Until next time, keep those flashlights charged and your curiosity burning bright. Midnight Society, The Bradford Chronicles.